Welcome to another ECS Tuning Easy DIY. In this video, we are going to be doing an ignition service on that BMW M240. Our kit comes with everything you need. We have 6 new ignition coils, 6 new iridium plugs, as well as some spark plug boot protector. You are going to need one specialty tool for this, which is the Schwaben 14mm spark plug extractor. It is a 12-point 14mm socket with a magnet inside. If this is your first time doing a BMW ignition service, you need this. Keep it in your toolbox. You're going to use it on pretty much every modern BMW that I can think of. That's it. Let's go ahead and get started with this very easy DIY. To get started, it's really straightforward. We're just going to pop the plastic cover off the top of the motor, and it's held on with some rubber grommets, so don't yank all at one time. You don't want to Incredible Hulk it, but you do have to pop it off. There you go. As you can see, here are the rubber grommets that hold everything on. With our cover removed, we're going to move on to the plastic covers up top here in the engine bay. We have our plastic nuts up here, a tab on either side, and then these will pop out, and we'll have a similar setup for the last middle cowling, and that'll give us access to all the ignition coils. So these are all just a quarter turn. And we come over to our tab here. One cowling out. Now that we have one of these off, I want to take a second to show you that these aren't 10mm nuts in the traditional sense. They're captive, and they just have to rotate 90 degrees to lock and unlock the cowling. So when you're taking this off, don't try and do this with an impact or you're going to break these off. Now we're just going to pull this sealing, the weather stripping here, straight out towards the front of the car, and then feed the cable out from the little pocket. All right, now we're just gonna loosen the bolts here on under our cowl cover and pull the sound deadening out. You will need an extension back here, but they've notched the rain tray so that you can come straight down with it. And then the same thing on the other side, they're in the same spot. With those loose, we should be able to pull the sound deadening out. Be mindful of your post for your engine cover. You don't want it to tear up your foam. It's actually a pretty cool moment to see. You can see how they have all the sound deadening really molded to the backside of the engine. So you see me struggling with it a little bit to pull it out there because it's so precisely made to fit. So just take your time, don't tear it. Now we'll take the bolts out that we loosened earlier, and we're going to pull this center section of cover up and out, and that'll give us full access to our 6th coil pack. You'll notice I always use my magnetic tray. And if you're watching our DIYs and you haven't got a magnetic tray yet, what are you doing? Quit sleeping on it. And sorry, I said there were 3 on this side, but there's 4. There's one last one here in the corner. It's hiding under your rubber weather seal. And then the weather seal is adhered to it with a plastic push pin rivet, expanding rivet, that isn't going to make much sense until I get it out and can show you what it looks like. This is the plastic expanding rivet that holds your weather seal to the center tray here, and the pin goes in and then pushes these tongs out, and that's what holds it in. So you pull the pin out and then you can pull the rest of the retainer out. With this loose now, we're going to come through and take out the strut tower brace here. We're going to pop these off. There'll be 2 bolts here and a bolt here and bolt here. We'll loosen that up. We don't need to totally remove the bar, we just need to loosen it so that we can lift the center cowl up and out of the way over all your relays and stuff. I don't want to mar up these covers too much. They're a little bit rubbery. So I'm just going to come in and use the Schwab trim removal tools and pry the plastic piece up and out of the way. Now we have these two, here and here. All right, so our strut tower brace is on with inverted Torx, so E20s. So I'm leaving the top two bolts in so it anchors the bar, but everything's loose, so I should be able to lift it up enough without it totally leaving its location. And now we should be able to get the center cowling out. Super easy. Now that all the cowlings are off, we have access to all the coil packs all the way back. I'm going to show you how one comes out, and then obviously we just repeat on all six. But I want to call out two things. First of all, this is another inverted Torx, so an E8 is anchoring the coil pack into the valve cover. And then the plugs on the coil packs, they're actually locking. So you just want to pry your tab up. Now that's unlocked. And then push on it like you would any other tab to, unlock the final clip, and it just slides right off. I want to warn you against mashing this with a flathead screwdriver because you'll definitely break this and then you'll be SOL. With everything loose, we're going to come in and loosen our anchors here. And another good note is these are actually captive. You can thread them all the way out, but you don't need to. So right there, it's loose but captive in the coil pack. And we just lift up. So there you are, it's captive. And your new coils will have this also captive in it already if you buy the kit from us at ECS. Now before we go ahead and pull all the spark plugs out with our 14mm Schwab socket, we want to blow some compressed air down in here just to get any dirt that's in the well blown out before we take that spark plug out and it falls into the combustion chamber. Now we can get a good idea of the health of the motor. So just to give you an idea of how the socket works, you can see the 12-point socket. It's on a magnet, so as this goes in, now it's held in place. And you want to do this because as we go to drop the spark plug in the hole, you don't want it to actually drop in the hole. You could bend up the electrode on the end and then maybe you get some funky spark coming out. But also a good time to call out that the new plugs will come with new washers. I always thread spark plugs in by hand until I can no longer do it, and then we'll chase them with the ratchet and apply proper torque. And that's it. Go ahead and repeat on the other 5 cylinders. All right, that's it for putting them back in. We'll go through, torque them all to spec, put the coil packs back on, and do the reverse of everything we just did. So I have all our plugs laid out on the table here. This is cylinder 1 all the way down through cylinder 6. And what I'm doing is just rolling them over, making sure we don't have any overly hot spot or overly rich spot showing up on them. Overly rich, we'd see a lot of black soot on the tip of the plug. Overly hot, we'd see a lot of like white burn marks on the tip of the plug. We have, you know, a nice gray sort of coating on them. Doesn't wipe off. And that's what you're looking for. That's just a good quality burn. We have a little bit of thread, a little bit of oil on the threads where they pass through the spark plug tubes, but that's to be expected on any used car. It's nothing that I'd be concerned with, you know, here today. We don't have a bunch of oil seepage all the way up the porcelain, which would indicate a really bad leaking valve cover gasket. So this looks pretty good. We're gonna put the new plugs in, and should be good for many, many more years to come. Torque for our spark plugs is going to be 30 Newton meters, which is not a whole lot. So I'm just going to go in, hand tighten everything, and then we'll switch to the torque wrench for the final torque spec. This is a little over the top, but it's always good for, you know, longevity. But we'll add some of the spark boot protector grease inside each one of these as they go on over the spark plug, and that just helps everything, helps prevent arcing and kind of makes it easier to just get in and out. The rest is pretty straightforward. We are going to put each coil pack in over the plug, give it a little press down, and then tighten the inverted Torx on top. Here we go, that's a done coil pack. I'll put all 6 in, and then we'll reconnect all the wiring. Put our wiring back on, we're gonna slide it in, and don't forget to click the locking tab. So you're gonna hear it click in, but then after that, you wanna push that down for the lock. So once more, first click, second click. If you've watched many of our DIYs, you know that I like to hand thread on all the bolts before we go ahead and final torque. That just gives you a chance to massage everything. So here we had that strut brace loose, so I want to be sure that that goes back in the right spot. We're putting this cover back on. You just want to be sure that everything's clear once all the hardware is started, and then if it is, you're good to tighten all the way. With the cover out of the way, we can see everything a little bit easier. So we're going to put the plastic in the hole and then put that in the hole of the shroud. And then we're going to chase it with the expander push pin. And now she's locked on. Put this back on. It works just like your valve cover on the 3 rubber grommets. Voila. Now that all our hardware is in there finger tight, go around and just tighten everything up a little more and lock it down. These two bolts that I'm doing right now, so this one and the one on the other side here, they're actually notches in the cowling. So if you have too big of hands and you can't get back there to thread your bolt in, take the cowling back out, thread the bolt in, and then you can massage the cowling in through. It's difficult because you're running into everything else, but it's possible. So if you don't have quite the same dexterity, you got some options. Put the cowling in there. We're now going to come back for the brace. Make sure it's in there parallel. Tighten it down. Back on goes the weather stripping here. And remember, we have to put our cable back in to the little flaps in the weather stripping. And there's a little cutout on the weather stripping for where it feeds back in to the rubber on the strut tower, like so. So you can see where that flap stops. Now it's time to put the cowling back on. All right, when putting your cowlings back on, pay attention to these tabs. You see one's low and one's high. You have to feed the cowling in between the two. So like that, you can see how the high tab rides in the ridge of the cowling. Then we'll just get the rest lined up. Our tab is in the locator here. And now I'll twist these 90 degrees. And if you ever get lost on how far you have to go, there are notches on these little 10mm nuts that line up with the notch on the cowling. It's really, really hard to see. You can just make it out by touch with your hand. But when in doubt, you can use that to align. So that's the unlocked position. And there, with the notches lined up, you can see is the locked position. Don't forget to put your cowl plugs back in. Again, they're like a rubbery plastic, so they don't go on with much force. The last step is the engine cover. We're going to line the 4 rubber grommets up with the 4 posts, and it will pop right on. All right, that's it for this DIY. I hope you enjoyed. Please consider liking and subscribing for more Enthusiast content. Let's go drive this thing.